Other interesting political news, you have the UAW president, Sean Fain, putting out a live stream on September 8th. So I know that is a couple days from now, and there's some things that'll be noted in this video that are already outdated because it was a couple days in the past. I said from now. Was it the age-old saying? Reverse that. Now, Sean Fain, interestingly enough, I can't believe it, the live stream is actually open. So it wasn't the complete censorship that they're known for. Although, no, I think there is a way to disable that perhaps in live stream. But, of course, if you go to the comments section, they're always turned off. Which, I can't help but think that it's only the people with indefensible ideas, so only the most mentally and morally vacuous people want censorship. And again, look at my videos on the UAW. There are a lot of people who do not like my opinions and do not like the facts I bring up. But I keep the comments open partially because I want to hear experiences. I love hearing about different opinions, different facts, different ideals, and I take time to respond. I apologize if I'm a couple days late because, again, I work a couple jobs, and I might not be always the fastest to respond to the comments, but I always leave them open so we can have these discussions because I want to hear the different perspectives. And who knows, we might even change each other's mind. We might learn something new. But it'll be interesting to see how this video is received. Now, this is a live stream, and I'll give Sean credit. Although he may not be effective in terms of getting what they want negotiating-wise, he is entertaining for marketing. So you have him sitting in his office, and behind him is a garbage bin, or as the British might call it, a dustbin. And it has... He took craft paper and he cut out words, and he cut out words that say Big Three proposals, which is what this is all about. The Big Three is the kind of the, not slang, but it's the name of the Big Three automotive companies, which used to be the pinnacle of automotive. Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. Now, subsequently, GM has gone bankrupt several times since Billy Durant founded the company, combining Buick as well as Oldsmobile. But it was 2009. You have both GM and Chrysler go bankrupt, partially because of the economy and partially because their costs are outrageous with the UAW. And in terms of giving the union credit, during the bankruptcies, they relented on some of those benefits that were fiscally impacting the company negatively. So I haven't seen this speech. I should clarify, I didn't listen to the whole thing. I looked at the status bar and I scrolled into the part and found the part where he actually started speaking and then backed up by 3 seconds. So it'll be interesting to see. Will he say something I agree with? Most likely not, but I want to know what's on his mind. It'll be interesting to see what he says. Let's dive in.
Hey, good evening, UAW family. And especially give a special shout out right now to our local 551 rally going on over in Chicago. Sorry.
Already an issue. He didn't suit up? Come on now. Every man should always suit up. It's the best. That's a joke, you see. I allegedly do own a polo with a little embroidered logo on it. And he did do that. He does have the UAW logo on him.
I couldn't be there with all of you, but thanks for tuning in. We actually have almost 12,000 people tuning in right now. And before I get started,
I would tell you the responses in terms of how many people agree with him, but the comments are disabled. Interesting.
I do want to...
Granted, you do have the live chat, and it's mostly fans. But in terms of people who aren't in the UAW,
apologize for getting on here late. We got a lot going on right now. Just to let you know, all three of your vice presidents and your bargaining committees are working their asses off right now. Working late into the night, and we spent a lot of late nights, but we got a long way to go. So before we get rolling here, though, I do want to honor our UAW members on strike on the front lines of the fight against corporate greed. We're still talking about our brothers.
That is the funny perspective that a lot of people have in the comments when people think I'm rooting for the Big Three in terms of the corporate execs. No, I just don't think there's a lot of transparency on both sides in terms of, I remember one comment on LinkedIn when I was commenting on the situation, said, oh yeah, Mary Barra makes $27 or $29 million a year. I'm like, that seems like a lot. Let me look into it. And I did. I looked it up on the internet. That's her total comp. Which, in terms of what's really the issue for the cost of goods sold for the cars, that'd be the comp that's, paid out. So she makes about $2 million a year, I believe, for her salary, which pretty darn good. But it's one of those things where the rest of it was benefits as well as stock. Which stock, but when I go buy a Chevy, if I were to, why would I buy a Chevy? That's that's another topic for another time. But if I were to buy a Chevy, it doesn't matter how much stock she has, how much she pays, or how much she is paid, a little bit, but stock. And right now, again, they're currently proposing a cost of $80 billion per manufacturer over the cost of 4 years, which you're correct. That is more than any other automotive company.
Sisters out there at West Rock in Region 9, Local 2326. Members' health care is under attack, still despite the company's massive profits throughout the pandemic and beyond. And still our brothers and our union family out there at Thombert in Region 4, Local 997. The company's still pushing proposals that would completely undermine the union. This all goes back to the same thing. Corporations want us to believe there's nothing we can do to stop their race to the bottom. But our Local 2326 members at West Rock and Local 997 members at Thombert are proving them wrong. Never forget that when our labor isn't valued, we have the power to withhold it. We have the fundamental power of a strike. Please visit the UAW Region 4 Facebook page and donate to the cause of these striking workers. It's our solidarity that makes us stronger than any corporation. So tonight we're going to talk about what's on a lot of people's mind. With 6 days left until our contracts expire at the Big Three, the automakers have yet to offer our members a fair contract.
Again, that's going to be the debate of what is fair. They've all been making offers, some more than others, but again, they're asking for, 40 to 46% increase in compensation? I believe GM came back in at 10, and let me know, how many of you got a 40% raise? How many of you what kind of raises are people getting these days? Most businesses, even Google and Microsoft, the largest companies on the planet, they're all getting rid of employees, firing sometimes 10,000 people at once. Most companies are really hurting right now. But I digress.
We gave our economic proposals to Ford, GM, and Stellantis.
Stellantis is the parent company headquartered in Europe, which bought Chrysler, which also owns Jeep as well as Dodge. So they're a European conglomerate or a parent company behind many automotive companies, now in charge of US-based Chrysler, or now kind of a subsidiary.
Well over a month ago with a clear message. We aren't going to stand by and allow you to continue to drag out negotiations like you have in the past. September 14th is a deadline, not a reference point, for all three of these companies. Finally, after weeks of delay, we have counteroffers in from each company, and I've filed them in their proper place again.
That's a joke, because he actually has a dustbin behind him with crumpled paper on there, which part of me does appreciate a good dad joke. So don't get me wrong, that's not a terrible joke right there, but it is funny that he's complaining about them dragging their feet, where unions, not just the UAW, a theme in unions is when they're upset, they'll slow down. You've seen this kind of at hospital strikes throughout the years, where they'll do the task, but they'll be as slow as possible as a form of protest. So it's one of those things where both sides are doing it. It's not like it's only the corporations doing it. But I digress for now.
So tonight I'm going to get into the details of what the companies are offering and what the companies think you're worth. After raking in record profits for the past decade, we'll talk tonight about what they think you deserve versus what they take for themselves. Before we get into it, I want to acknowledge the moment we find ourselves in. This isn't just about the latest offer from this or that company or this or that piece of contract language. It's about
Interestingly enough, it looks like GM is still in debt by a couple, $100 billion? Jeez Louise. I'm sure they'll, kind of like the U.S. government, $32 trillion in debt. They'll pay it off. I don't know how. I'm kidding, but statistically, I don't think they will.
This moment in history, and it's about the movement we've built together. We live in a time of record inequality. The rich keep getting richer, while the working class falls further behind.
Smart emotional rhetoric. And like some messages, there's a little bit of truth in there as well. There are a lot of people struggling these days as well. Interestingly enough, fun fact, my family is from the north. I do have experiences on both, not personal, my ecosystem, my family do have experiences on both sides of the aisle when it comes to the automotive industry, UAW, as well as the management side. Fun fact.
The wealthy live in comfort, while the working class lives paycheck to paycheck. For many working people, it's harder and harder to see a future for ourselves in this economy. Auto workers have been on the front lines of that. For the past several decades, we've been relentlessly under attack. Our plants have been closed, families torn apart, our standard of living has dropped like a rock.
Now, why do plants close? There's really only one reason why, because they're not fiscally attractive in terms of if a plant is losing money, you usually get rid of it. Why are they losing money? Sometimes maybe the vehicle wasn't marketed right, but a lot of times it's not physically feasible, fiscally feasible rather, because cost. And again, a lot of things go into that, including the cost of labor.
Our work-life balance is a joke. Our retirement security is a myth. And the auto companies have also been on the front lines of that. The big three have profited $250 billion in North America in the last decade. Their CEOs have made
Is that revenue, profit, EBIT, earning before income tax? What is that?
hundreds of millions of dollars personally.
Well, yes, that's what happens when you work your way up to get to become the CEO. You're rewarded for making good decisions and fired subsequently for bad decisions. In the private sector, that's usually what happens. If you're in a union, you usually get paid just to stay there longer and longer. There are many hilarious and sometimes morally depraved stories where you hear about people where, oh yeah, they've been in the post office for 20 years. Do they perform good? No, but they're in the union. Perhaps the pinnacle example of a union being the postal service.
They jack up.
Another issue, or rather clarification, if you don't like how much the CEO of GM is making, for example, if you don't like how much Mary is making, or if you don't like how much Chris is making, Chris being the CEO of Ford, become a shareholder. Buy a couple shares. Go and vote. Those are some of the rights you get when you are a part of the company and are invested in the company.
Car prices. They shortchange the workers. They take whatever they can get from the U.S. taxpayer. And they pocket the profit for themselves and their Wall Street cronies.
See, there's something I do agree with in terms of the taxpayers. Why are the taxpayers bailing out these companies? I don't think that was fair. You also lost money on an instance. So, see, there's a kernel of truth, or perhaps something we do agree on.
For years, the big three have gotten away with this. They've been the leading edge of corporate greed. They beat down the workers, they weaken our unions, and they break the law if they have to. I mention all of this because the proposals we're going to discuss today aren't just words on paper. These negotiations did not happen in a vacuum. They're a reflection of the balance of power between Big Three's corporate greed and UAW solidarity and organization.
But he just said you guys have all the power, you could strike. Huh?
These companies offer what they think we're going to accept. And let's be real. Workers accept what they think they can win.
Did he just describe negotiation? They offer what they think they're going to accept? Okay.
When we build our collective power together, we can change that equation. Over the past several months, that's what we've been doing, together. We've been organizing like hell. We've been speaking the truth, and we've been standing up. And that's what we're going to continue to do up to and beyond September 14th if the occasion calls for it. So before I get into the details of these proposals, I also want to take a minute to recognize our incredible negotiators on this contract. Vice President Mike Booth,
I would congratulate them once you come to an agreement, because right now, there's not much good happening in terms of both sides. There's not really they're not building common ground so much as they're going back and forth. So, I mean, they're on the case. I don't know what kind of upside they're getting yet.
President Chuck Browning and Vice President Rich Boyer have been doing an incredible job of leading your bargaining teams that all of our members elected. They see the incredible organizing going on at the plants and locals across all the country, and it keeps all of us charged up. They have your back, and they know you have theirs. So let's get into this. 7 weeks ago, we put forward our members' demands. These were our core economic proposals to the companies that reflect the sacrifice that we've endured and the profits we've generated for the big three. For weeks, we've heard nothing. Crickets. Finally, last week, we got a counteroffer from Ford and still nothing from GM and Stellantis. So we filed unfair labor practice charges with the NLRB against GM and Stellantis for their refusal to bargain in good faith. What do you know?
Or just taking their time like you yourselves have done?
Despite talking about how offended they were and how the charges were frivolous, suddenly they got their act together and offered up proposals to our demands.
Oh, they monetized the video. Hilarious. The union dues aren't not enough. Finally, the big three comparison.
We finally begun to see all three companies at least submit something, which is why I wanted to have this update. On Wednesday, we gave Ford a counter proposal to Ford. We gave a counter proposal.
Again, I thought he was going to go over this, but maybe not. So I'm just going to give the list of what their original demands were. Again, this is straight from Sean Fain. It goes the 10. 1, elimination of tiers, which means everyone would get paid the same in terms of new hires, I believe. They want a substantial wage increases, double-digit increases, please, 40%, which, again, I can't fathom that being acceptable in any business environment in terms of, I don't know how they'd accept that cost. Restore of cost of living, which, again, they might get that. You know, I'm not saying they shouldn't get all these. Well, unless the business want to be insolvency is an interesting thing. Let's see. They want defined benefit pensions for all workers. Reestablish retiree medical benefits. That, again, that was one of the biggest costs during the 2009 bankruptcies. Again, that's not even a debate for another time. Healthcare, because I would argue because of the interference of the government, how disgustingly entwined it is with bureaucracy and myriad reasons, is expensive in the United States, especially retiree benefits. They want significant increase for retiree pay. Okay, that's, again, they want a right to strike over plant closures, which, again, another issue with that, I see specifically, I see a parallel. Think of Radio Shack. Radio Shack used to be a great Fort Worth-based company, Fort Worth being a city in the best state of the Union, Texas. Now, when Radio Shack first went bankrupt, it was a couple years back, around 2012 era, I believe, and it's one of the instances where the first time it went bankrupt, they were bought out by American General. One of the contingencies of them purchasing the company was telling Radio Shack, hey, we like you because you have a lot of locations throughout the whole U.S. There's a certain value to that. On a condition of us buying you out, you cannot close any more stores. That was detrimental to Radio Shack, obviously, because they're no longer a business. I was going to say, I should probably zoom out the camera one of these days, this old Radio Shack sign. I'll put in the YouTube community. I'll show you the Radio Shack sign on the wall. You kind of see the antenna, where they're advertising Archer antennas. But nevertheless, that was one of the reasons they went bankrupt for good, because Radio Shack had a lot of stores, and sometimes they were oversaturated. As in, you had stores right next to each other, but you had other stores where they weren't making enough sales, but they couldn't close them, so they were losing money on those stores. And again, that's not the only reason Radio Shack went bankrupt. That's another whole other topic for another time. But that was a huge contributing factor, is they had a lot of stores that were losing money. And especially in aggregate, that is a huge negative for the company. So this is bullet point number 7 that the UAW wants, the right to strike over plant closures. again, that would be my concern from a business perspective of why that might not be a prudent thing to allow. You also have Working Family Protection Program, a 9, end abuse of temp workers. How are they? I don't know how they're defining abuse here. And then they say, and one grant. Oh yeah, they want the pay. You want to get paid 40 hours a week, but only work 32, which again, no other industry. Trying to think who else gets that. The defense industry has a fascinating thing where they get every other Friday off, but they work more hours to offset that. But let me know in the comments, do you know any other instances where people get paid 40 hours, but they only work 32? Again, that's a huge cost and you're losing efficiencies. So I wouldn't think that'd be prudent to give them, but so that's what they originally asked. And again, if they were to give all that, that would cost $80 billion per big three. So for Ford, GM, and Chrysler over the course of the contract, which is 4 years, $80 billion. Perhaps they're like doing the Trump, the art of the deal. You ask for a lot and then you get, but they don't seem to be budging on anything, but that is what they originally wanted. So now we're going to go dive into the offers from the big three.
Ford, and they in turn responded on Thursday. On Thursday morning, GM gave us a proposal, an insulting proposal, but still a proposal. And finally this morning,
insulting or realistic?
Stellantis gave us their counteroffer. Here's where things stand on our core demands. Under tiers, we need to end the broken system of unjust tiers. We believe in equal pay for equal work, that no worker should be treated like they're second-class citizens. We proposed a 90-day progression to top rate. The rest are...
Wow. Imagine that. Imagine joining the company and in 90 days you get paid the top. That's a lot.
Of pensions and post-retirement health care for all.
That's a lot.
Ford has proposed a 5-year progression down from the current 8 years, and they rejected all pension and retirement.
Again, any other company, I can't imagine getting the top pay tier so quickly. Like, perhaps it's apples to oranges in terms of my anecdotal experience personally, coming from I used to be when I worked for someone else, I was in sales, and you would progress to different pay bands, but it was based on your performance, not tenure, and it took a lot longer than 90 days. So from their perspective, that would be amazing. From the cost of goods sold and the business perspective, is that feasible? I would be skeptical.
Healthcare proposals. GM proposed a 6-year progression, also rejecting all of our pension and retiree healthcare proposals.
So Ford did not go bankrupt during the 2009. Again, so it's fascinating to see some of the miscommunication. Again, there are some nuances when we're talking in text and going back and forth, when you talk to YouTube comments and LinkedIn comments. Someone actually thought that I was insinuating that GM caused the 2008 the financial crisis. No, that was the government and the bank. That was the government and the whole housing issue. No, they didn't cause it. I'm saying the UAW and the whole union is a contributing factor of why GM went bankrupt. So GM, General Motors, as well as Chrysler, now Stellantis, Chrysler went bankrupt in 2009. Ford was beat to death. They were down to like $1.82 per share, but they didn't go bankrupt partially because they were lucky and took out a big loan, but they were all negatively impacted. GM going bankrupt, and you look at their portfolio, look at why, one of the big contributing factors was the pensions. And again, I had some relatives who had that, and I hear the stories, and I can't imagine the costs. Again, it was great, but there was also a time when GM was the largest auto manufacturer of all time, and they've been losing market share since the 60s for a myriad of reasons, not just because of the UAW, partially because competition came, and we've all seen what happened there. But I digress. We'll go back to this.
And they want to continue the substandard pay scale for CCA and...
Substandard, it's more than the competition, as is.
GMCH workers.
So GMCH, what is that? Again, let's see. What is a GMCH worker? Again, I'm seeing this in real time. Or, sorry, not real time. I'm watching this for the first time. A GMCH worker holding tiers. So that is going back to the tiered system where people are paid differently based on their tenure, close progression, GMCH, GM deal, General Motors Component Holdings, GMCH. General Components Holding Workers. The third. Oh, so okay, so it's the third tier in the GM UAW contract. Interesting enough, subsidiary. So it's part of the tiered system. All right.
Stellantis also wants to keep a 6-year progression to top rate. Maintain.
Which again, name one career track where you can actually get paid the top pay in 6 years. I mean, most people take decades to get the top of their field or pay band.
The tier system by rejecting all pension, retiree healthcare proposals, and keep the substandard pay with our parts depots.
Oh, okay. So it's a subsidiary. He said parts depots. He says it's at Mopar, which is their parts depot division.
Under wages, in our member demands, we propose significant double-digit pay increases of 40% to match the salary increases of the big 3 CEOs. To catch up with this brutal inflation.
It's one of the most hilarious things when it comes to people comparing CEO pay to employee pay, and they always say, "Oh yeah, if they just got rid of that big salary, everything would be fixed." And then they realize, kind of like when people win the lottery, "Oh yeah, if they just gave it away, everyone would be happy." No, it's like everyone gets like what, $2, $3, $4. It's like it's one of those funny things because I mean, think of GM alone. Are they still hovering around? How many employees are they at these days? Again, these numbers are just people who have a LinkedIn profile. So active LinkedIn profile, they have 132,039 employees. So overall, they have much more than that. But even just by going by, again, 132,000, 32 and 39. So if Mary Barr was to get paid nothing this year, and her base salary is $2 million, every employee would get $15. That's actually a overestimate. It would be much smaller than that because, again, GM has more than 132,039 employees. That's how many active employees have their profiles linked to GM's page right now. So, again, $15 is that, again, it's even less than that considering the whole company. So, actually, let's see here. So let's go back here.
And to make up for decades of falling real wages in this industry.
It's hilarious, he noted, to catch up with inflation. Where does the UAW donate a lot of money to? And who causes inflation? That's right. Politicians are one of the biggest contributors. The people who just keep printing the money machine. Overwhelmingly, look at the UAW's contributions throughout the decades. They've gotten a lot of people elected with the money they've given them throughout the decades, and they overwhelmingly give to one side of the political aisle. So it's almost as if they cause their own issue. Ironic, some might say.
Ford has proposed a 10% raise over 4 years with lump sum bonuses that many employees won't be eligible for.
Does he say why they won't be eligible for? No. Give us more data.
GM proposed the same, except members at CCA would only get 2% over 4 years, and GMCH.
All right, that's going to bug me. What is GMCCA? Okay, so it's a subsidiary, General Motors Customer Care and After Sales. Okay.
Would get no raises. This morning, Stellantis offered 14.5% over 4 years, and for their salaried bargaining unit people, they offered lump sums only. I want to be clear. This is movement. We went from 9% at Ford to 14.5% at Stellantis. That's happening because we're putting on pressure. But I want to be clear about something else too. A 14.5% increase over 4 years is deeply inadequate. It doesn't make up for inflation. It doesn't make up for decades of falling wages. And it doesn't reflect the massive profits we've generated for this company. Under cost.
I would love to see a table or a graph that talks about the efficiencies of the UAW versus other automotive workers, such as the ones who work at Tesla, Toyota, or Honda. He's saying they generate all of this, and don't get me wrong, I used to be a big fan of the Camaros and the Corvettes back when they actually were sports cars with 3 pedals and a stick shift, as every car should have by default. But that's also part of the reason they're so expensive. Because of the cost of labor, that is more expensive than the competition. And
Cost of living allowance, we propose the restoration of COLA, cost of living adjustments that would help
So they want a cost of living adjustments on top of a 40% increase in wages. And again, what other industry expects that much of an increase in wages? Most Americans, every big company it seems, is being laid off in terms of, you look at their employee numbers, they're decreasing their employees. Walmart is not frozen their hiring, they're actually hiring people, they fired people, but subsequently last week they announced that they're going to be hiring people for their e-commerce dedication at a much lower rate. Because again, everyone is tightening their belt, even GM. So if you look at these companies, GM paid out, or they bought out 5,000 employees in February. So 5,000 salaried employees were bought out because Mary Barra, they're desperate to cut cost. Because again, I don't agree with the business strategy of going to EVs for General Motors in particular. For an example, I think they make a great V8. They have made some great Corvettes throughout the years, great, well, Camaros when they used to have stick shifts, well, all of them really. But it's one of those issues where their idea is to go full EV, and they're going to try to compete with Tesla. With all the data I have right now, I think that's a futile attempt at best. Because again, not only does Tesla have the reputation, but they have a huge lead on the competition, not just for GM, but they're an innovator, they're the first to market. There's a big value prop behind that. And if they want to transition the company, so GM, Cadillac, she wants to be full EV by 2030. GM wants to be full EV by 2035. That's going to cost a lot of money, not just in research and development and making new factories, but also you have to hire software engineers. You're going to have to develop an IT company. It's going to be a huge transition. It's going to cost billions. Also, some of these websites are saying that GM is 100 billion plus in debt, which again is long-term debt, but it's another cost that needs to be taken into account. So again, a cost of living on top of a 40% increase in wages, like that's, again, most people aren't getting both of those things. I mean, when I used to work for a tech company, we didn't get a cost of living adjustment. Every year, if you do good, you get promoted, or you wouldn't get promoted. But there wasn't a standard, oh yeah, every year you're just going to get paid more because of the economy, or because the government that they're voting for prints more money and creates more inflation. So again, I don't think it's realistic. I don't think they're going to get both of these. If I were to kind of look into the magic crystal ball and guess what's most likely going to happen, I would guess they're either going to get no cost of living adjustment, and they will get a bigger number for the increase of wages. But I don't think these companies, GM, Ford, or Stellantis, I don't think they're going to do both. Because again, I don't see that a lot in the private sector. I know the union is so big, it's almost like a public sector job in many regards. But when I look at the other industries and all the data I have right now, you look at Honda, Toyota, let me know in the comments, do you think they'll get both? Let me know, but right now, I don't think that's realistic.
Workers keep up with inflation so we don't get left behind economically. Ford has proposed a severely deficient COLA formula, using a formula that would provide 0% increases for 10 of the past 13 years and would be projected to add 0 in raises over the next.
Is he talking about because of the outliers that were this couple of years, which again, you get what you vote for. And again, in terms of who printed money, both politicians did it during the lockdowns. You had a change of the folks in the White House, and they both printed a lot of money. Subsequently, the latter did a lot more printing of the money, which hurt inflation. But you get what I mean.
4 years. Let me say that again. Ford proposed COLA formula is projected to provide 0 in terms of raises over the next 4 years. That's not COLA. That's not even Diet Cola. That's Coke Zero.
he is clever. The dad jokes, it's hard to find someone who doesn't like a good dad joke. So in terms of marketing, I think he's doing a pretty good job with the dad jokes. Because again, it is always good to break the ice, so to say. So I always ask someone, how much does a polar bear weigh? Just enough to break the ice.
Let me point something else out. For years, we've heard from these companies that COLA is not possible. It's not realistic. Suddenly, though, it's a very deficient proposal. COLA is back on the table. Despite the severely deficient COLA Ford is offering, they've beat GM, who haven't moved on COLA, and just proposed lump sums that many employees won't receive. And Stellantis rejected.
Now, I wish when it comes to any topic, I want more data the better, which is why, if you're part of the union, again, would love to hear your input, because more data the better. But, yeah, why don't they receive it? I would be interested why. Is it because of their classification as a worker, their tenure? Why? But, again, we'll keep going.
Our COLA proposal.
When we challenged ourselves to...
That's hilariously ironic. So the company that's advertising on this is Fisker Automotive, which they're not part of the big three. So perhaps they're attempting to poach labor. But again, if you're working at the big three, you're getting paid more than any other automotive company. Probably not going to go somewhere where they pay you less. Although there'd be something to say in terms of reputation. You could say you work for a company that makes a car that lasts a quarter of a century versus a disposable car. Some might say. And again, going back to that topic in the comments a couple weeks or last week, there are many reasons why some cars are more reliable than others. I know some is because of engineers choosing cheaper components. That's also partially because they have less money to work with. But I do appreciate that input, or that note, so to say. There we go.
Under profit sharing, we put forward a proposal to provide workers $2 for every $1 million spent by the companies on stock buybacks and special dividends. If they've got money for Wall Street, they sure as hell have money for the workers making the product.
No. Yeah, if I was to share, yes, that's not what stockholders want here. Stockholders are the reason people hold stock. Or rather, sorry, dividends are the reason why many people hold on to these stocks. People who have these stocks, I talked about this with T-Mobile as recently as last week. T-Mobile had a big article where for the first time ever, they were paying dividends, partially to compete with the two behemoths, Verizon as well as AT&T, who for years they pay dividends as well. So what would be better money giving it to the UAW or the people who are more vested in the company? They're buying part of the company. I would say, again, maybe if they could drive down costs, that'd be interesting. I know they're talking about profit sharing, but again, in terms of rewarding employees, it kind of used to be a cliche. You watch a lot of old movies, you work really hard, you come up with a new innovative idea to save the company money, you get a bonus. I think that's a good idea. Come up with ideas that would save the company money. I don't know. We'll keep going.
Not only have they not met our proposal, Ford proposed a scheme.
So wait, they're providing workers with $2 for every 1 million buyback and share. Yeah. No. So, and again, there are a couple reasons why companies buy back their stock, historically speaking. And it's not just because they want to keep the price of the stock up. It's also partially because they think it's undervalued. But yeah, this would give them a negative incentive to buy their own stock. So, yeah, we'll see. I don't think
That would have shrunk profit.
Yeah, let me rewind that actually. Profit sharing. Let me see if we can clarify this.
Despite the severely deficient COLA Ford is offering, they've beat GM, who haven't moved on COLA, and just proposed lump sums that many employees won't receive. And Stellantis rejected our COLA proposal. Under profit sharing, we put forward a proposal to provide workers $2 for every $1 million spent by the companies on stock buybacks and special dividends.
That adds up quick, because there are a lot of UAW members. A lot.
If they've got money for Wall Street, they sure as hell have money for the workers making the product.
Wall Street has a stake in the business as well.
Not only have they not met our proposal, Ford proposed a scheme that would have shrunk profit sharing checks.
It is funny because, again, there are nuances to everything, but it is funny. Just you choose different vernacular to get your points across. It is funny that he says scheme because, again, in terms of the United States, that it's a very more of a pejorative term for a plan.
By 21% over the past 2 years. GM's proposal would have meant a 29% smaller check last year. Stellantis rejected our profit sharing.
But that's smaller than nothing. I mean, because they're proposing this $2 for every million on buybacks and special dividends and increases in normal dividends. Yeah.
Proposal completely.
So
Under 10.
Again, if you're part of the UAW, you know who Stellantis is. But if you're not in the automotive community, Stellantis, again, is the parent company behind Chrysler, which also owns Dodge and Jeep. And Stellantis is European-based.
We proposed ending the temp abuse, or the abuse of so-called temps.
It's already illegal to abuse temps, so you're not supposed to like throw Pepsi cans at them. Oh, I was gonna say, or cola cans. A cola can, that would have been much better pun, some might say, more appropriate to the topics. But what does he consider abuse of temporary employees?
Who are exploited at low wages for years at a time, and also denied the full benefits and wages despite working endless hours to keep these companies going.
I don't think he understands what the purpose of a temporary employee is. They are to be temporary and to be more cost efficient. And it makes no sense to pay them more the same. I don't think he understands the business concept behind this.
Temporary workers
should
be converted to full-time after 90 days with full pay.
Oh, God. This is terrible. He's never owned a business, I would guess. Again, I'll do more background on Sean, and I understand the union members like him. I've read a lot of comments in the reviews and the videos that say they voted for him overwhelmingly. They appreciate what he's doing. This is terrible. Very similar to the people who said they should get rid of free internships. It's not a good idea. Partially, in this case, for internships, most companies actually lose money in terms of the efficiencies of the person that's in that position. And they're getting something that's rarer than gold, I would say opportunity to learn a new trade, learn a new craft. And again, like most things in life, more government bureaucracy, the worse things get, and the less opportunity there is. Now, specifically for this case, they want to have it so that they're converting them in 90 days. I got to re-listen to this. It can't be right.
Who are exploited at low wages for years at a time, and also denied the full benefits and wages despite working endless hours.
You don't get that's part of the condition. That's partially why they're attractive. And again, it would be financially burdensome. They wouldn't even be temporary employees anymore. His idea is basically to get rid of temporary employees with these conditions.
To keep these companies going. Temporary workers should be converted to full-time after 90 days with full pay, benefits, and profit sharing.
So they're going to become super temporary workers? So the way he's saying it right now, and again, I'm seeing this for the first time, in 90 days providing all benefits and profit sharing, then he's basically getting rid of the idea of temporary workers, because why would they be a temporary worker then? Is he, and again, he might clarify in a second here, we'll find out, but is he saying with that vernacular that they must be converted within 90 days? So once you hire them, you have to become full-time? And is this saying after 90 days, they would become, by default, I believe, a full-time employee? That, again, that'd be a negative incentive that would basically get rid of them using temporary employees at all, which strategically thinking that maybe is their perspective and their goal. Because again, the more full-time workers they get, the more union dues they make, and the more billions they can give away. Donate to politicians. Unions in general gave $1.8 billion to politicians in 2020 election, or the midterm election rather. The UAW, I believe, is 48 million. Let me know in the comments if you know a good website for that statistics. I've seen a couple contradictory numbers, and I'm trying to find something that's impartial, which again isn't always the easiest thing when it comes to finding some of this data. But I'd love to find out how many millions are they giving away this year.
Across all three automakers, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, we've received proposals to raise temp worker pay to $20 an hour, but provide no path to full wages and benefits. Under job security,
So you're not going to say him? Okay.
temporary work.
So, okay, he's not, I don't think he's breaking them down, so I'll say him right now. So Ford, their proposal was no path to full-time with, he says meager. He's saying increases to $20 an hour, which is awesome. I wish I was making that much earlier in my career. And an 8% cap. Makes sense. GM proposal is no path to full-time with, again, he's saying meager wage increases to $20 an hour, which there's nothing wrong with $20 an hour. And Stellantis, they said no path full-time with wage increases $20 an hour.
Workers should be converted to full-time after 90 days with full pay, benefits, and profit sharing. Across all three automakers, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, we've received proposals to raise temp worker pay to $20 an hour, but provide no path to full wages and benefits.
And again, I was going to say, I'm seeing, while they don't have, actual comments open for people who are not in the UAW, in terms of the comments on the screen for the live stream, the people who are in the UAW members, they are supporting of him, which makes sense, but it's interesting to see a lot of them continually praising his words with a couple, not a lot, that are against him.
Under job security, we're fighting like hell to keep good jobs in America and to put an end to plant closures that destroy our communities and tear our families apart.
Right. So I have a great idea that would actually get, you're never going to get full 100% employment. You'll never have 0% unemployment. There's some people that just, they don't want to work. And again, there's some people who can't due to medical reasons, what have you. But a really great way to boost the economy and increase employment, get rid of all the bureaucracy in the United States around minimum wage laws. Get rid of this morally disgusting idea that if you don't have the skill set to get what the government says is a minimum wage, you can actually work your way up the corporate ladder. Because that's what the government is saying. If you don't have the skill set that warrants their arbitrary minimum wage number, then you don't deserve opportunity. Which, there's nothing more disgusting than taking away an opportunity. And one of the best things about the United States is there are people who've been able to work their way up from the bottom. Bob Iger from Disney, the current CEO, who I might not agree with politically speaking, I admire his work ethic. He actually started, I believe, sweeping floors at the television studio or television channel ABC, and he worked his way up, all the way up, to become CEO of Disney. Which, granted, of course, I find them morally vacuous and disgusting these days. But in terms of working hard and having career progression, that's quite admirable. If you get rid of the bottom rungs of the corporate ladder, it's hard to climb it. But I partially digress.
That's why we proposed strong job security language, creating the Worker Family Protection Program to disincentivize the big three from killing jobs. AKA,
he's talking about closing plants, which, again, talking about the Radio Shack analogy, and I know it's not an apples-to-apples comparison in terms of Radio Shack didn't sell cars or assemble cars, but that was one of the issues where if you have factories that are losing money again and again, you have to close them. Like, otherwise, I was going to say, I was about to make a joke, you're not the government, you can't lose money forever, but in some cases, GM is kind of like that because they've been bailed out multiple times, and they've gone bankrupt multiple times. You actually have to specify what year they gone bankrupt. Unfortunately, Billy Durant, the founder of the company, actually died when it was not in his ownership because he lost control to the banks. A fascinating fun business fact of the day, actually, with my ADHD. Billy Durant, who founded the company, bringing together Buick and Oldsmobile, he actually built it, and then unfortunately, I believe it was the first Great Depression came. Of course, car sales went to crap, so he lost the company. The banks took it from him. But with that American spirit, he actually teamed up with a little unknown race car driver from France called Louis Chevrolet. And they worked together. They built, started making consumer cars. And they built Chevrolet so big, he bought GM back from the banks. Which, in terms of overcoming odds against all, there's something admirable about that story. Unfortunately, during the next recession, he lost control again to the banks. And allegedly, based on autobiography I read, he died, or one of the last times he was seen before he subsequently passed, he was saw managing a bowling alley. But there's something beautiful about starting a company and getting it back. Of course, it's sad it didn't end too well, but fun little history about GM if you didn't know that.
We also proposed the right to strike over plant closures. Ford proposed giving themselves the unilateral right to outsource any of our work at any time.
Is it because they took all the risk and built the company from nothing? Oh yeah, they did. A lot of these situations where, why is it fair that you only get the upside? If the company loses money, will you give money back? What's going to happen there? And interestingly enough, the Ford family is still in control. You could buy, and I could buy. We could go out and buy Ford stock. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't make recommendations on the show. Although like everyone, I wish I bought Apple stock back in the day. But I choose to reinvest in myself and my businesses. The ultimate gamble, some might say. But when it comes to Ford, the family, even though they don't own a majority of the publicly traded stock, apparently they have most of the stock that matters, the voting stock. So they still control it. As far as what I knew a couple years back when I was looking into it.
GM rejected all of our proposals around job security, and Stellantis did the same, rejecting our job security proposals as well. Under work-life balance, we all know that living in a plant 7 days a week, 12 hours a day isn't living at all. We need real work-life balance, so they can't just keep working us to death.
Now, I'm one of those people where I struggle with the sympathy when it comes to regards to the work-life balance. I always tell people 105 hours a week can't be beat. That's usually how many hours I put into the businesses. But I know I'm not an outlier, and not everyone is dedicated to their. They have a job, not a career. That not everyone is all in on that ideal. But yeah, I'm not saying it's easy to work in a factory. I had a couple of people who worked in a factory for decades in the freezing winters of Michigan and the hot scorches of Michigan. They were there, and I know the stories. But it's one of those things. It'll be interesting to see where they come in terms of negotiating. Are they people that are really working 7 days a week because they want to or they have to? Or is it this company scheduling them? It's one of those things where I almost have a little sympathy with that because my grandfather actually worked every single day, with the exception, I believe, was it Christmas and Thanksgiving in aluminum. One of the careers he had was an aluminum foundry over in Michigan. That job, like I'm sure some jobs, well, interestingly enough, maybe not, but I've heard the horror stories. And there's a certain satisfaction of hard times make strong men. Well, in the United States, perhaps that explains why there's so much weakness these days, unfortunately. But what are the current proposals?
Workers have families. Auto workers have communities.
Again, he's giving data in a way that is very favorable towards him and making it look sympathetic. He says increased work-life balance and family balance and more paid time off and holidays. Well, I think there's too many holidays to begin with in the United States. It seems like every day is holidays or something. But quantify the data. Let me know. I guess in terms of the work-life balance, does he really expect him to go 40 hours, get paid 40 hours for only work 32? I don't know any other business that could handle that, and I don't know if that's feasible to ask for. Again, maybe this is the art of the deal, like Trump, and you're asking for the world and then some, knowing they're going to come back to reality in the middle, maybe. But even in the middle, I don't know how fiscally feasible that is.
And auto workers deserve a life. That's why we're pushing for more paid time off and holidays and a shorter work week.
How much more shorter?
After years of granting it to their salary employees, Ford has finally offered paid parental leave to UAW members for 2 paid weeks.
2? Lucky.
But they refused to recognize the Juneteenth holiday, a day of historic importance and a new federal holiday.
But that's also depending on who you're talking to, that's also a politically charged day of the year. So in terms of the private sector, I've seen this be a point of contention and a debate across many businesses as they're wondering what's politically correct versus what. It's a very interesting thing that it's a politically charged thing, so I don't know if this would cause other workers to strike if they gave it to them. I don't know about that. And then parental leave. I know maternal leave. I guess parental is where you actually get both off. And 2 weeks is really quite. I was going to say, I know some places they have no time at all. That's pretty darn good. Well, at least anecdotally when I'm looking at different industries. And interesting, though.
GM agreed to offer Juneteenth as a paid holiday,
Well,
but
that makes sense given, again, I'm not saying it's always a political issue, but there's some politics involved in that particular holiday, and GM leans more into it. So I'm actually surprised it wasn't already. I'm actually surprised they didn't propose it, interestingly enough. And I'm not saying people shouldn't get holidays off. I would say on average there's way too many holidays in the United States to begin with. Lord knows by the time, a couple of years from now, there won't be any day that isn't a holiday. I'm not making a pejorative comment about that particular holiday to begin with. That's another topic for another time, perhaps.
rejected all of our other proposals. Stellantis also agreed to offer Juneteenth as a paid holiday, but no other movement anywhere else.
I think they all know how politically charged that specific date is. They don't want to be seen as saying no to that. So I actually do think they all were going to give that thing already, but maybe they used it as a negotiating thing, saying, "Oh yeah, we'll acquiesce to that." But from a marketing perspective, I think they would be scared not to give that away. And let me know in the comments, do you think would they be boycotted if they didn't? I mean, that's happened to other companies before. So another interesting note.
Most people have no.
Oh, more advertisements. Interestingly enough, it's not for a competing automotive company.
Under retirees, we've proposed significant increases to retiree pay. As the retirees, those who build our union,
But how much? Give me more. I always ask people, and if you do have data in the comments, let me know. I want more. I want as much data as possible. More data is always better. But he's saying significant increase to retiree pay. I hope he clarifies, but that's what the slide says right now. But what is that number?
have gone without an increase for well over a decade now.
Most companies don't have that anymore because it's not financially viable. But that's just my 3 cents. Or in the people in the comments might say it's negative cents, but I think it's worth 3 cents. It used to be 2 cents, but 40-year hyperinflation, I'll make it 3 cents. Should be 4, but still free to click that subscribe button. Or give a comment below. I expect they will be spicy, some might say.
Ford, GM, and Stellantis rejected all of our proposals on this front.
Yeah, because it's expensive.
So there it is. That's what these companies think you're worth. That's what they say.
They already think you're worth. It's interesting that he feels as if there's a lot of animus. And don't get me wrong, there's kind of like a lot of companies, when you have interdepartmental or different divisions, there is always some, I believe, some type of, depending on the culture of the companies, kind of competition. But this animosity goes back decades, which, again, I'm not saying either side is completely innocent. Don't get me wrong. But it is interesting that he thinks they're getting paid more than the competition already.
Say about you behind closed doors, meeting with the bargaining committees. And then they go on TV and talk about treating us like family. Tell me, is this how you treat your family?
I mean, some families have crazy uncles. I mean, I don't know.
Do you tell your family, good luck living paycheck to paycheck, but I'll keep my $29 million a year?
Again, that's not the cash they're getting. That's not what it costs the shareholders. And I made this distinction when I talked about the 2009 bankruptcy, when I talked about how someone's getting paid $65 an hour to put a tire in a car. They said that wasn't their cash amount. I agreed. I clarified later in another video, because I appreciate the comment that highlighted that I didn't make it clear. Again, also goes to show we make the show better together when we work on comments, give more feedback. And it's one of those issues where I'm thinking, what costs the consumer? What's increasing the cost of that good sold? What's increasing the cost of the car? And I would say the number one factor would be the direct cash, as well as the benefits where you're paying that every year. Stocks are a little bit more different, a majority. And again, I keep noting Mary Barra because in terms of my historicals, and I used to write papers about this types of topics, that's one where I have most of the data in terms of my researching about. And with her recent salary, it's a $2 million cash base. Then you have some benefits, and then an overwhelming majority is stock. And again, I think a good idea, again, maybe for a win-win, I don't think they'll go for it, but why not get stock to the union members? If they want them to be more, again, I believe they rejected in the past. Let me know in the comments with your experience. Would you be more attracted to that type of deal where GM gave the union members stock if they hit certain performance marks? because maybe they'd be more invested in the company's outcome if they were to do that, be more invested to find more efficiencies. I'm one of those people where, in terms of my thoughts about compensation, I would much rather give people stock so that they're more motivated and they feel like they're more part of the team. I think when you look at companies who have done that historically, there's a lot more success around that methodology. I'm not saying it's the only methodology, but I think that's a very successful plan that's been used before. Look at Tesla. A lot of them that get the stock, they have incentives to build phenomenal machines. Although, my 3 cents, every car should have a stick shift with 3 pedals. I love manual transmission. It's what I drive daily. So Tesla's not for me, but I admire what they're doing from a technological perspective and a business perspective. But that's just my 3 cents. We'll get back to Sean.
Do you tell your family, go make cars 7 days a week, 90 days in a row, so I can buy a second house in Mexico? That's not how I treat my family.
I don't think that trend. Are people buying houses in Mexico? I thought that was like a 90s trend.
So listen, I've heard the nonsense from some big three executives and some of their friends in the media about my foul mouth or theatrics or this or that. I want you all to know something. I don't do these updates because I just want to blow off some steam about insulting proposals. I do these updates because our strength as a union is in our membership. Our strength as working people is in our unity.
It's one of those things where I think it's interesting in terms of culture of business. Foul language has become more and more appropriate, kind of like in common culture and common America, for better or worse. And it's one of those things where, in terms of my perception of Sean and his quote unquote theatrics, I think he's doing what he was elected to do. I might not agree with his methodologies or what he's demanding, but I think he's doing well in regards to the metrics of the people who voted him in for the job. And I think the dad jokes are kind of funny. I think they're a great way to break the ice, and in terms of the theatrics of having the little can behind him, that's entertaining. And well, I'm sure some executives find it pejorative and they find it insulting because it's kind of meant to be insulting. It is also mildly entertaining. You may or may not be looking at a screenshot of that right now for a little trying to think of a creative way of saying bastardized thumbnail that I try to put together with my ultimate tool, Microsoft Paint. 10 plus years of experience. Definitely a pro. That was a joke. I have 13 years of experience in it.
You all deserve to know what they're saying about you. You all deserve to know what's being negotiated about your future and about your life. I want to be clear. We want a deal. We're ready for a deal. But it's got to be a deal that honors our members' sacrifices and contributions. We aren't going to lay down and take whatever scraps they give us. It's time, it's long past time that we stand up. And we're serious about this deadline, and the companies are serious too. Just yesterday, I saw reports of Ford taking out big loans and prepping scabs to work if we go on strike. They're getting...
I would actually be concerned if Ford was taking out big loans. They did that before, around 2008, right before Ford was the only one of the big three that didn't take money from the government and didn't go bankrupt. Partially because they took out a loan at a very strategic time. Again, I'm not a financial guru telling you what to do in terms of loans or savings or stocks or anything like that. I'm just saying it's very interesting they're taking a big loan out right now. But again, just a little speculation with the market, everything that's going on in business. And maybe it is just to cover, again, he uses that pejorative term, scab. I prefer the new term, Band-Aid. I think that's going to be the new word. Band-Aids, not scabs.
Ready. So we're getting ready. If we hit 11:59 p.m. on Thursday without a deal at any of the big three automakers, there will be a strike at all three if need be. In the coming days, we're going to be sharing more with you on that front, but I want all of you to be ready.
It's funny, some of the comments are asking, how much is Sean making? Now, again, if you have the data, I would appreciate it. Interestingly enough, it's almost... There's not a lot of transparency with the UAW in terms of when I was looking at their website, trying to find more data. Maybe they're trying to be more secretive, but it's one of those things where some websites are estimating he's making between $175,000 and $200,000 a year. with cash and benefits from what I've seen. Again, some of that was just Glassdoor.com, which is a review website, and there's some were based on numbers based on his predecessor. And let me know in the comments, I believe it's about maybe 180 based on another site. But it'll be interesting to see. But overwhelmingly, the comments from the live stream, again, there's no comments because they're disabled in the video. It looks like most are being supportive of Sean.
I've got 2 words for every Big 3 worker out there listening. Stand up. Be ready to stand up for yourselves, for your families, and for your communities. Be ready to stand up against corporate greed, against management's lies, against distortions in the media. Stand up for what's right. Stand up for what you believe in. And I truly believe, just as a Gallup poll recently showed, when 75% of Americans said they stand with us, I truly believe that all of America will stand with us.
I couldn't help but laugh at that. I mean, it's one. I don't know. I wonder if I could find that. Could I find that poll? I don't know. It's one of those things where one of the most important things with polls is, I learned this from business statistics. I had a couple good teachers in my life. I was blessed in that regard. Always know your sample size. It's going to vary, obviously, depending on a myriad of things. You could change the sample size. You could change how wording of a poll is to get whatever you want. So inherently, I'm skeptical of polling data unless I have a momentous amount of data to sort through, so I know myself. But he's saying, 70% of the people agree. 70% of the people are saying, "Oh yeah, we agree with the UAW." Well, interestingly enough, I did my own poll, and while I don't know the demographics and the geolocations of the people, I do have and again, it's a small sample size, and again, there's probably maybe a skew based on people who have LinkedIn profiles with their career, both in terms of do they work in the factory, do they work in the corporate, wherever they are. But nevertheless, most of my connections are in technology, so that's also a curveball in and of itself. But in terms of, I asked people, do you think the UAW will bankrupt the big 3 again? With the caveat of, only GM and Chrysler went bankrupt, and again, they're a contributing factor. I'm not saying it's the only factor, but of the 57 people who voted, 75% of people, at least I know public schools are all-time low for math scores, that's 3/4 of the people polled said they will bankrupt the companies again. And 19% of people said no, they would not bankrupt the company, and 5% people were too cowardly to actually choose. Because I usually say, yes, no, or other, aka comment, but no. So interesting enough, that's, again, small sample size. I'm giving you the data in terms of that's 57 votes, and that was taken over the course of 4 days. And the sample size of who saw it, I believe, and not all of your followers see it, but I have about 20,000 people who could have seen it. So again, that's anecdotal data, just giving you data I gathered for this show today. That's the data I have from that specific poll.
In this fight. So I thank you all for joining me tonight, and we're going to keep updating you as we keep going. I'm going to try to look through some comments. We actually have over 1,800 comments right now, so bear with me.
Well, let's do a couple of them.
I see comment already. I can't believe no raises for us. And exactly, that's what they think about you. That's the respect they want to show you.
Most people are getting laid off these days, but okay.
For the profits you...
And you're already making more than the competition, but I digress partially.
Great. For the $250 billion in profits you've created in the last decade.
I would be, again, please, again, I don't know if you need a full-time employee to give us all the data for this, but like just looking at GM's 10K or looking at the financial statements, they do still have a lot of debt. Again, how are you defining profit? There's more nuances. Look, and again, that's kind of the inherent issue of having conversations online and having comments back and forth. Some things get lost just in text translation, but yeah, I wish there's more transparency in these numbers. And again, I wish we had, again, this is a negotiation. They're going back and forth, perhaps on an hourly basis for all we know. But yeah, instead of just saying, we want more of X, Y, Z, just what are those numbers that you're currently asking? was a long, pregnant pause.
We make them richer, and they try to send us to the soup line. That's why we keep filing the offers in their proper filing cabinet back here, and we'll just keep filling that thing up until they want to get serious and take care of your demands.
That's a funny dad joke. I appreciate that. He pointed to his trash bin, or if you're British, the dust bin, with the big three proposals written on it. I wish it was more like Twitter, where you could choose the questions based on the greatest number of people who are liking it. But I don't think Google should definitely have that technology by now, you would think. But unfortunately, no, that's not a feature yet. And let me know, let me know if you would want to do an episode with live stream. I've never tried it before. I'm not sure how we would do it in terms of, I have an editing PC where this is just my laptop in my office, but I'm sure we can make it happen somehow. Just put the profile on there, and yeah, let me know if that's something you'd be interested in.
Laying down the entire 17 years you've been at Stellantis, well, let me assure you, sister, that ain't happening no more. I can guarantee you, Vice President Boyer, I can guarantee you the other vice presidents and these bargaining committees, along with myself and our team and our entire executive board, them days are over. We're all in this together.
Even though he makes, 180, 190, 200 grand a year in total benefits, I believe.
I see.
Although I guess if you don't like that, we could always vote him out. Although I don't. It'd be interesting to see what factors go into who chooses the salary or the compensation package. Interesting.
Somebody from the CWA is on here saying they support us, and I'm always glad we all stand together. Let me assure you, I've talked to the president of AFL-CIO, Liz Schuler. She sent a message today to let us know that all the unions stand together. They're all behind us, and we stand with them. That's what solidarity is all about. Sorry, I'm just over 1,900 comments here, so just trying to look through some here.
That is one of the issues when you have all these live streams. There's such a vast quantity. Again, let me know. That should be an idea by now. Like, Google has the technology to do darn near anything. There should be some way where you can actually have the comments, you can vote which one you want the most. Because right now, like, I'm reading the live stream, and again, there are a lot of comments.
Yep, I see a comment here, no raises for SBU, it's ridiculous. You're damn right. How they can stand there and hand us a proposal at Stellantis that says hourly workers get this and SBU gets lump sums. It just shows the disconnect of the reality of where the companies stand with the workers who create these massive profits. So it's disgusting.
Suspense is killing me. Which one's he going to choose?
I see comments about pensions and all that. And look, people got to understand. I mean, I don't think the general public even understands that the majority of our members in Big Three do not have any retirement security. No pension, no post-retirement health care.
That would be most of America. I'm not saying that's just the facts. I'm not saying that's good or bad. Well, I would say it's probably bad, but it's also because I think it would be, again, another topic for another time, but I don't think businesses should be taxed. They should just pay their employees more. And they should reinvest in the companies more. But I don't think the government should be burdening businesses. Because again, when you look at if you start a business or look at the tax structures of businesses, you're quickly, what's not the way of saying disappointed or dismayed, or just, it's astonishing how many taxes there are. By the time you get your paycheck, it's been taxed multiple times. So I would say get rid of the corporate tax so that companies can pay you more. They have more capital to work with, more money invested into the company. But I know another topic for another time, perhaps.
So, those things have to change. And our retirees that have been out there.
And again, anecdotally speaking, in terms of my knowledge with researching businesses, most of them being private sector, between 20 employees and maybe 8,000 employees in Texas, I researched probably about 650 for the past 36 months. And I know one company in the private sector who has a pension. And they're an old school company. They've been around forever. And based on their industry, they have lucrative profit margins to support it. But or these days it's just not fiscally feasible for most companies to have a pension. I don't know anyone at a company that has not been around. Again, I don't know any newer company that's offering that. Partially because, and again, it's partially blame the government for having all these burdensome taxes on these businesses where they have less capital to work with, less capital to pay with. But pensions just, again, they were a great idea at the time, but they're just not sustainable right now. And maybe that not be the case. Maybe we get a new president or maybe the government just gets rid of the corporate tax, which would be great, not just because the current companies will reinvest more into the company, but you'd also have businesses move to the United States, to start businesses to the United States, and to relocate businesses to the United States. You saw it with Iceland a couple years back and Greenland, Ireland specifically, actually, for EMC and DeLorean. A lot of companies went there because of the low corporate tax structure, but I digress for now.
That laid the groundwork for all of us to be here. They haven't seen anything in over 17 years. So it's time. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do and a lot of movement to make here. And one thing I really love about this, we're approaching 2,000 comments now. It's just, and over 12,000 people on this update. Is just the solidarity we're seeing among our members, among our communities, with the general public, and among other unions. That's what this is all about. We don't just fight for ourselves, we fight for the entire working class. Everyone gains when we do well. We got to get back to setting the standard and raising the standard for workers everywhere. So that's what this is all about. That's what our fight's about. We all stand united. So I appreciate everybody getting on, and let me assure you, the committees and the VPs and us, we're working around the clock to make sure you get your share of economic and social justice, and we're not going to stop until we get it.
Oh, that's a cliche politician thing, almost exclusively on the left. Your social justice.
And ultimately, you have the final say. This is your contract, and we're going to fight like hell and stand.
Actually, you don't have the say. If you're an individual, you can actually negotiate based on your skill set, your tenure, and individual compensation. But no, that's what the union does.
Together to get what you deserve. So, thank you all for being on. I apologize again for getting on late, but we got a lot going on right now, as I hope you understand, and we're going to continue to do it and get back to it. So we'll update you as things progress. So look forward to it, and thanks a lot.
And they do have a pretty good graphic that zooms in and out with the logo. So, let's see here. Let me know in the comments. I can't help but think, I don't know. I don't think they're going to get everything they want. It's a lot of wants. Although they do need a lot of money. I mean, what was it, in 2010, alone, during that election cycle, a little fun fact of the day, the UAW spent $87.5 million on politicians, or lobbying and political activities. I can't fathom how many people were elected by the UAW alone. A lot of folks. But nevertheless, do you think they're going to get all 10 things they want? 40% increase in salary, or I guess not salary, wages. But I don't think it's fiscally feasible. But let me know in the comments. And again, we're not going to agree on anything, but I love hearing your perspectives, and we could together perhaps learn a thing or two. Will they get everything they want? I would say, for everything, I would say the Magic 8 Ball would not look good. Will they strike? And again, I would say the odds with all the data we have, and again, things change on an hourly basis for these negotiations, I would suspect, but I would say with all the available data we have now, with the different, how far they are in terms of the UAW versus the Big Three, the odds that they're going to have a strike, obviously the odds of a strike are increasing every day, of course, and a lot of good deals, or I would say more accurate, reasonable deals, or good, whatever you want to call them, they come in at the final hour. But let me know in the comments. I think it's pushing towards a strike. I mean, right now this is a very precarious time for the Big Three. And again, I'm not saying I agree with their business ideas. Lord knows I actually disagree with a lot of the CEO's approach in terms of, I don't think EVs are good for the environment when you look at the precious metals used, the life cycle asset management of it. But all these companies are moving away from their core competencies. It's a huge risk. They're going all into EVs, which inherently are not good for a million of reasons, but that's what they're deciding. Maybe Mary Barra, the CEO, will be fired and she'll lose her $2 million salary because they bankrupt the company because they can't compete in the EV division. Tesla's got a huge lead ahead of them, specifically. And Mary Barra, in their statements where they say, who do you think your competition is? Where you're trying to go? They're trying to compete with them. That's one of the reasons they cut 5,000 salary positions from GM corporate, or I guess that's all salary positions as well. They bought them out of their contracts so they can get rid of the positions, get rid of the cost. So it's one of those things where they're cutting cost, they're trying to compete in something they barely have done before. Of course, the Chevy Bolt just had another recall, incidentally enough, but is a big risk right now for the big three. And you have this, who the heck knows what's going on with the economy. There's a lot of unknowns when it comes to politics in particular. No one really knows who's going to get elected. There's a lot of tax implications, business implications, a lot of uncertainty. So let me know in the comments what you think is going to happen. But whatever your opinion is, I respect it. I appreciate you coming to the table with your opinion. I appreciate your perspectives. Love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in today. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to click that subscribe button. I know it's ambitious, but trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of September, I think we could do it together. Don't forget to take the time to comment and like the video. I really appreciate the feedback, whether it's making my speech or trying to make my speech slow down a little bit, trying to be a little bit more articulate in the videos. Thanks to you, I was able to bring that more to my attention, put it on my list of things that I'm trying to improve on, or whether it's giving me feedback, whether it comes to the UAW issue, or maybe it's political stats, or maybe just your experience in certain business segments. More data, the better. I'd love to hear your experiences, and I could bring them up next time we talk about them on the show. So don't forget to leave the comments. I greatly appreciate it. Also, don't forget to take the time to tell your friends, tell your families, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.